Let's talk about cancer, cloning, and stem cells. These are all applications of mitosis. Normal cells reproduce exactly and stop reproducing when they are supposed to. Cancer cells keep reproducing. They don't know when to stop. This is abnormal mitosis. Normal cells, if damaged, are destroyed or repaired. Cancer cells don't die if moved to another part of the body. This is called metastasis when cancer spreads. Normal cells stick together in the correct place and specialize or mature properly. Cancer cells don't stick together and they don't specialize. They stay immature so they can reproduce faster. How do you know if you have skin cancer? Look for these. Asymmetrical moles, the borders are uneven, they have multiple colors, they're larger than a 1/4 inch or the size of a pencil eraser, and they are changing in size, shape, and color. If you've seen any of those, go to your doctor. Cloning is an application of mitosis, where identical offspring form from a single parent, a form of asexual reproduction. This was originally done by taking plant cuttings. So a stem is cut from a parent plant, the cutting is dipped in rooting powder and planted. So this plant would be a clone of the parent plant. Advantages of cloning. The parent provides nutrition, it's quick and doesn't require a partner. Disadvantages are now there is a limited gene pool and genetic variation. Mutations are passed on. So for example, if one organism was not resistant to a disease, and all of its offspring, which are clones of it, also not resistant, then if that disease were to strike, all of them would die. Plant tissue culture and cloning laid groundwork for genetic engineering. Asexual reproduction is very common in plants. The offspring are always genetically identical to the parent. Examples include strawberry plants can send out runners and they reproduce that way. Amoebas divide into 2 through binary fission. Some animals can reproduce by parthenogenesis, so an unfertilized egg that can happen in some reptiles. Hydra, which is a water plant, form new hydra by budding. So they grow a new plant on its side and then boop, off it pops and a whole new hydra. Mushrooms can release spores, or here we have a starfish. If a certain amount of it breaks off, it can grow a new starfish from that fragment. Asexual reproduction brought upon the first ideas of simple cloning experiments. Speaking of cloning, let's talk about Dolly the sheep. First step in cloning a sheep is the haploid nucleus is removed from the egg cell of the surrogate sheep, and now we call it an enucleated egg. Second, the diploid mammary cell nucleus from the animal to be cloned is inserted into the enucleated egg. So here we have the mammary cell. It has a nucleus of 2N. It is inserted into the egg cell to form a zygote. The zygote divides in vitro, which means in glass, so outside the body. Then the blastocyst, step 5, is inserted into the uterus of the surrogate. The surrogate is the sheep that's going to carry it in the uterus. The U means female sheep. Last, genetically identical sheep are developed. So let's go back and make sure you've labeled the diagram. This is the enucleated egg into which the 2N nucleus is put, and it forms a zygote. The electrical impulse starts cell division, and then the blastocyst is inserted into the U, and then identical sheep are born. Can you clone yourself using a hair cell? No. Cloning is only possible with totipotent cells. Totipotent means unspecialized or undifferentiated. If you tried to use a hair cell and you were to grow that in a petri dish or use the nucleus, it's already specialized, so all it will grow is more hair. Totipotent cells are obtained from the moella or blastocyst of a developing embryo. So these cells develop within about 6 days of fertilization of that initial egg. Speaking of cloning, let's talk about identical twins versus fraternal twins. Identical twins come from one egg fertilized by one sperm, We refer to that as monozygotic because there's only one zygote. During mitosis, a single cell breaks free and a second embryo develops. They have the same sex, blood type, and genetic makeup. They usually share a placenta. So identical twins are clones because they have the same DNA. Fraternal twins come from 2 eggs and 2 sperm, so we refer to them as dizygotic. They do not have the same genetic makeup or genes. They are no more similar than regular siblings, but they share a uterus. And so because they share a womb, we can call them womb mates. Thank you very much. They usually have separate placentas. So fraternal twins are not clones. They do not have the same DNA. Stem cells are cells that are capable of replicating and differentiating into many different cells, such as a skin cell, muscle cell, or nerve cell. Stem cells can be derived from embryonic stem cells, so taken from the blastocyst, umbilical cord, or adult stem cells in bone marrow. We produce all of our blood cells in our bone marrow every day. So red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets all come from within our bones. The goal of stem cell research is to repair damaged tissue. For example, Parkinson's disease. Stem cells are transplanted in the brain to produce functioning dopamine neurons. Michael J. Fox has Parkinson's disease and is a proponent of stem cell research. Bone marrow transplants provide new stem cells for patients battling leukemia. These are cancers that usually begin in the bone marrow and result in high numbers of abnormal white blood cells. We can see from this slide of a blood sample, there are way more white blood cells than there should be, but they are not acting as white blood cells because they are cancer. Issues in stem cell research and their perspectives. Embryonic stem cells. How do we obtain stem cells? This would be an ethical perspective because it discusses how do we obtain it? So are we killing an embryo to get these stem cells? What is the cost? That's an economic perspective. Can we use this to clone humans or just to treat disease? So that's a question of right or wrong, which be ethical perspective. You can be anything you want to be when you grow up. Stem cell parental advice.